So picture this. It's the summer of 1954. And what looks like a typical boys' summer camp in Oklahoma is actually the stage for one of the most revealing experiments in history. This is the story of Robbers Cave. It's a deep dive into just how easy it is to make us hate each other and, more importantly, what it actually takes to bring us back together. You know, it all starts with a question we deal with our whole lives, right? How do we make friends? How do you take a bunch of people who don't know each other and turn them into a team, into a community? But then there's the darker side of that question. How fragile are all those bonds we build? What's the switch that flips that turns a feeling of us into a feeling of us versus them?
Well, to get to the bottom of this, a team of researchers led by a psychologist named Muzafer Sherif came up with a pretty wild idea. They decided to run their own summer camp, not for s'mores and sing-alongs, but to literally watch prejudice and conflict get created, and then see if they could undo it.
The whole thing was set up like a 3-act play. First, they'd create the groups. Then, they'd make them fight. And finally, they'd try to make everyone friends again. Let's walk through how it all went down.
So stage 1, building identities completely from scratch. The big question was, could you just split kids into groups and, without any history at all, create a real sense of we?
And you've got to appreciate the setup here. They found 22 boys who were as similar as you could possibly get. Same age, same background, all well-adjusted kids. They were brought to this isolated park in 2 separate groups. And here's the kicker. At first, neither group even knew the other one existed. And what's really incredible is that within just a week of doing normal camp stuff, hiking, swimming, 2 totally distinct cultures just emerged. One group named themselves the Rattlers, and they got this whole tough guy, cursing vibe going. The other group, the Eagles, were more buttoned up, really into baseball, and didn't like cursing. Each group got its own leader, its own inside jokes, its own rules. Okay, so now you've got 2 solid groups. It's time for stage 2. This is where the researchers decided to light a match. There's this idea in psychology that says if you make 2 groups compete for something that only one can have, well, things are gonna get hostile. So they finally introduced the groups to each other, with a competition. And they weren't just playing for bragging rights. Oh no, the prizes were a huge deal for a bunch of 11-year-olds. There was a trophy, there were medals, and get this, brand new 4-bladed pocket knives for every single member of the winning team. I mean, come on, this was a zero-sum battle for some seriously cool stuff. The mood shifted almost instantly. In the very first baseball game, what started as a little friendly trash talk got ugly fast. It wasn't just competition anymore. They were genuinely trying to tear the other guys down. And this timeline just shows how quickly it all spiraled out of control. I mean, within 48 hours, they went from insults to burning flags to actual fistfights to full-on cabin raids. These were normal kids, and now they were arming themselves with rocks and socks, ready for a fight. Now this is fascinating. The conflict didn't just change their behavior, it literally warped how they perceived reality. After this brutal tug-of-war that went on for 48 minutes, the researchers asked them how long they thought it lasted. The Eagles, who almost won, remembered it being much shorter. The Rattlers, who nearly lost, felt like it went on forever. Their bias completely changed their sense of time. But here's the ironic twist. As the hostility between the groups exploded, the loyalty and friendship within each group got stronger than ever. This chart here is called a sociogram. Each line is a friendship. You can see how the Eagles basically welded themselves together into this super tight-knit unit, all united against their common enemy. So, the researchers had done it. They'd created 2 hostile tribes. Now for the really hard part. Could they undo the damage? Their first idea was pretty simple. It's based on this idea that if you just get warring groups to hang out, they'll eventually get along. So they tried it. They said, hey, let's just get them all together for a nice meal. The result? Well, you can see it right there, a massive food fight. It turns out that just putting them in the same room didn't just fail to help, it gave them a whole new chance to attack each other.
Okay, so that was a complete disaster. The researchers knew they needed a totally different strategy. They needed something that would force the boys to stop seeing each other as rivals and start seeing each other as partners.
And this is the single biggest lesson from the entire experiment. It's this idea of a superordinate goal. It sounds fancy, but it's really simple. It's a shared problem that's so big, neither group can solve it on their own. It forces us versus them to become just us. So the researchers manufactured their first crisis. They secretly went and sabotaged the camp's water supply. All of a sudden, everyone was thirsty, And as you can see from these original photos, you have rattlers and eagles working together, climbing on the water tank, trying to solve a problem that affected every single one of them. And they kept it going. They created a whole series of these problems. The boys had to pull their money to rent a movie they all wanted to see, and then, when the truck that was supposedly bringing them food broke down, they had to use their tug-of-war rope, the very symbol of their conflict, to pull together as one group to get it started.
And after days of being forced to cooperate like this, something really profound started to happen. The hard line that separated a rattler from an eagle, it started to fade.
The data here is just staggering. Have a look. At the end of the conflict stage, more than half of the boys' ratings for the other group were negative. But after working on those shared goals, that number plummets to just over 6%. Meanwhile, favorable ratings shot up from about 24% all the way to almost 78%. They stopped seeing an enemy and started seeing, well, just another kid. But the real proof was in their actions on that final day. The Rattlers, who had won $5 in a contest, decided on their own to spend it buying milkshakes for everyone, eagles included. And when it was time to leave, the boys who had shown up in two separate hostile groups all chose to ride home together on a single bus. The Robber's Cave experiment leaves us with this powerful and kind of scary lesson. It's terrifyingly easy to create hate between groups, but it's also possible to heal those divisions. Just bringing people together isn't enough. You have to give them a real, compelling problem to solve together. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? In a world so full of us versus them, what's the superordinate goal that we all need to start working on?